This monstrous stag with a terrifying face and a mouthful of fangs was called Bambi. At that moment, he was hunting a woman. In the end, the poor woman was cut in half by Bambi. Bambi once lived carefree in the forest with his mother. One day, greedy poachers entered the forest. A single gunshot killed Bambi's mother. After countless hardships, Bambi finally grew up healthy and raised the next generation. However, tragedy struck again. A truck from a local company, Webecker Pharmaceuticals, fatally ran over the doe while transporting toxic waste. In the ensuing panic, Bambi's offspring disappeared. Devastated, Bambi drank from a river contaminated by the toxic waste. The chemicals caused a horrific mutation in its body, turning it into a ravenous creature bent on revenge. Unaware of all this, a young woman named Xana sat in a taxi, ready to take her son Benji to visit his grandmother. Halfway down the road, a massive stag suddenly appeared in the middle of the street. The 2-ton vehicle was lifted and flipped by the stag's antlers. Because Xana and Benji sat in the back, they were unharmed. But the driver's leg was pinned by the twisted metal, and he couldn't escape. Even worse, the stag did not leave. It stomped the car again and again with its hooves. As the vehicle started to collapse, Xana apologized to the driver, then pulled Benji out from the other side. Only after running more than 30 feet she dared to look back. The giant stag now stood on the overturned car. At them, its mouth full of sharp fangs. It was the mutated Bambi. Meanwhile, at the far end of the dark road, an old woman in a white nightgown wandered along the forest's edge. Bambi's name. She seemed to see through the darkness and watched Xana and Benji being hunted. This woman was Benji's grandmother, Mary. As for Benji's family, they were at a nearby house preparing dinner. Benji's uncle Andrew prepared a feast of steak to welcome the mother and son. His aunt Harriet, complaining that Benji's father, Simon, was irresponsible. He didn't show up for such an important gathering, nor did he call in advance. Simon's younger brother, Joshua, that cell phones had no signal in these mountains, and the landline had been disconnected because Mary, with her dementia, kept calling the police with false alarms. At this, Harriet suddenly realized she hadn't seen Mary for a while. She hurried outside to search and finally brought Mary back. Harriet sat Mary down on the sofa beside her stepson, Harrison, reminding him to keep an eye on her, but Harrison was too busy playing games to take her words seriously. Just then, Mary spoke. "They are here." At the same time, Xana and Benji burst through the front door from their desperate run. It seemed Mary's dementia hid some ability to foresee the future. Quickly, Xana recounted her terrifying encounter. Andrew, calm and steady, suggested they stay home until dawn and then call the police. Joshua thought Andrew was heartless. The poor driver was still trapped in the car. The sooner they called for help, the sooner he might be saved. He grabbed his coat and went out looking for a signal to call for help. Elsewhere, 3 bounty hunters searched the woods with rifles. They had been hired by Webecker Pharmaceuticals to capture Bambi and bring him back for money. But instead of Bambi, they found the overturned car. The driver was gone, likely inside Bambi's stomach. While rummaging through the wreck, they discovered Xana's dropped phone. They figured its owner had been attacked. So by following the trail, they might capture Bambi. Excited, they raised their guns and tracked Xana's path, but they soon ran into Joshua. In the pitch-black forest, one hunter, Tyler, mistook him for Bambi and pulled the trigger. Joshua was killed instantly. Meanwhile, in the living room, Mary began drawing frantically in her sketchbook. Every picture showed an enormous stag. Benji frowned at the sketches. The more he looked, the more it resembled the creature that attacked them. Mary walked to the window, staring outside without blinking. Soon the lights outside flickered. A dead bird suddenly fell. Benji cried out for Xana. She rushed over just as Bambi smashed through the window and stormed into the living room. He swung his razor-sharp antlers, chasing them furiously. The family screamed and scattered. Harriet crawled into a kitchen cabinet, panting in fear, but then drops of liquid dripped onto her head. She looked up slowly, and there Bambi's monstrous fanged mouth was waiting above her. Harriet screamed and ran into the bathroom. She shut the door, but Bambi was frighteningly clever. He actually used its hoof to push the door open. Terrified, Harriet tried to escape through the window, but she was too nervous to open it. At that moment, Bambi burst in. His antlers struck Harriet right on the butt. She let out a painful scream, then squeezed herself through the window with all her strength. Meanwhile, Zana and the others took the chance to help Mary into the RV. But when Andrew tried to start the old car, it refused to move. Just then, Bambi and Harriet's deadly chase came into view. Everyone held their breath in horror. Harriet, unable to outrun him, was split in two by Bambi's sharp antlers, dying instantly. At that moment, the car finally roared to life, spewing black smoke as it sped into the dark forest road. Bambi abandoned Harriet's corpse and chased after them instead. His speed was terrifying. He quickly caught up, ramming his antlers against the trunk. Harrison found some rocks and leaned out the window to throw them at Bambi's head. But the attack did nothing. It only made Bambi angrier. It charged faster, soon running side by side with the car. Harrison panicked, locked the window, and scrambled back to his seat. At the same time, Andrew struggled with the gear shift. It was stuck and wouldn't move. Zana quickly reached out to help. Together, they finally forced it into fifth gear. The old car shot forward at full speed, slowly, leaving Bambi behind. Meanwhile, the three hunters, who had mistakenly killed Joshua, kept following the tracks. They arrived at Mary's house, which now looked like a demolition site with Harriet barely clinging to life. Excitement lit their faces. Bambi had to be close. On the other side, Andrew drove along the forest road for over 10 minutes before they had to stop again. A huge log blocked the way. They all got out to tie ropes and drag it away. Only Zana, Benji, and Mary stayed inside the car. Then from the end of the road, a terrifying roar echoed. Bambi was coming. Benji panicked. Without thinking, he slammed his foot on the gas. Unfortunately, the rope was still tangled around Andrew's leg. He was yanked down, dragged across the ground, his flesh scraping into bloody shreds. His screams echoed until he finally died. Harrison ran after the car, quickly grew exhausted. Bambi, realizing he couldn't catch the car, turned and charged at Harrison instead. Harrison, terrified, bolted into the forest. He stumbled forward blindly, nearly caught. Then he tripped and fell, his face landing right in a pile of animal dung. Bambi loomed behind him. At that crucial moment, Harrison buried his face deeper into the foul mess. The stench was so strong that Bambi decided Harrison was not fresh. Finally, Bambi turned and left. Harrison had narrowly escaped. He didn't dare wipe his face, only ran deeper into the woods. Suddenly, a rabbit jumped out, blocking his path. Frightened yet furious, Harrison kicked it hard, venting his anger. But after one flew, 5, 6, 7 more rabbits leapt from the trees. Under the moonlight, Harrison saw they had mutated too. Their mouths bristled with sharp fangs. As the swarm of rabbits closed in, Harrison stumbled back again and again. Then he tripped over something and landed on a hunter steel trap. The snap nearly tore him apart. He lay bleeding, barely alive. The mutant rabbits hopped closer, surrounding him, and in no time they would devour him completely. As for Benji, he kept dragging Andrew along until the car finally ran out of gas. Only then did Zana remember that Andrew was still tied to the back. She rushed out to check, but Andrew had already been dragged into half a body. There was no saving him. At that moment, Mary, who had dementia, suddenly became clear-headed. She stepped out of the car by herself and walked straight into the woods, muttering, "Death, death," over and over. Just as Zana pulled Mary back, Benji noticed something on the ground. He lit a flare. By its red glow, they saw the ground was littered with bones. They had accidentally stumbled into Bambi's lair. Terrified, Zana grabbed Mary and Benji and hurried back to the road. Luckily, they soon encountered a passing car. Zana flagged it down, begging for help, but the driver was none other than Michael, the leader of the hunters. He had seen Harrison's death by rabbits through the surveillance cameras and had come here on purpose. Michael took them to a den. As the car stopped, footsteps came from the shadows. Michael pulled out his gun, ready to shoot, but the figure stepped out quickly, greeting him, seeing it was another professional hunter. Michael lowered his weapon. That man was Benji's father, Simon. It turned out Simon hadn't returned home because he was after Bambi's massive bounty. He had been secretly planning in the forest. Only when he saw his wife and son did he finally show himself. But the couple immediately argued again. Zana blamed Simon for dragging them all into this nightmare. causing most of their family to die and still refusing to call the police. Simon argued back if they called the police, his plan would be ruined, and he might even end up in prison. While they quarreled, Benji noticed something. Two hunters, Tyler and Eddie, were abusing a caged fawn. That young fawn was Bambi's missing offspring. The hunters carried it quietly into the woods, hoping to use it as bait to capture Bambi. Just then, Tyler felt the urge to pee and wandered off, but Bambi had been waiting nearby. He darted forward silently. With one upward thrust of his antlers, he tore Tyler's head clean off. When Eddie realized Tyler was gone too long, he went to check. Instead, he found Tyler's corpse. He vomited in terror. Knowing Bambi was near, panicking, he ran to the car. But as soon as he climbed inside, Bambi's monstrous head smashed through the glass and lunged at him. Eddie was brutally killed on the spot. Meanwhile, Benji, feeling deep sympathy for the fawn, waited until the hunters were gone. He quietly opened the cage, picked up the little deer, and held it in his arms. Michael, watching the monitors in another room, saw Benji's actions ruin his plan. He immediately grabbed his gun and rushed out. At the same time, Zana realized Benji was missing. She stopped arguing with Simon, calling out her son's name, and searching everywhere. But what she found instead was the hunter's hidden stash of corpses. Here, Zana saw the missing Joshua. She realized Michael and his men were ruthless outlaws. Her fear grew even stronger. But someone was even more terrified. The female hunter, Jo, who had been guarding the base. At that moment, Bambi had already broken inside. He opened his bloody jaws toward the motionless Mary, but Mary didn't seem afraid at all. She simply sat there staring quietly into Bambi's eyes. Watching through the cameras, Jo spotted Bambi. She quickly packed up her things, planning to run away, but she made too much noise, instantly drawing Bambi's attention. Bambi swung his head and charged straight toward her. With nowhere to escape, Jo took a desperate gamble. She fired at a nearby gas tank. The explosion erupted in a flash, lighting up the night. Zana and Benji used that moment to see each other again. The family finally reunited, but Michael stormed in with a pistol, demanding that Benji hand over the fawn. Benji only held it tighter. Knowing Michael would really pull the trigger, Simon urged Benji to let go. But the explosion hadn't killed Bambi at all. Flames still clung to his fur as he charged at Michael. Michael turned his gun quickly, firing several shots, but Bambi ran straight through the bullets, slamming into him and vanishing into the forest. Michael's phone dropped to the ground. Zana bent down to grab it, but Simon snatched it first. Then the terrifying Bambi returned, his eyes locked on the fawn in Benji's arms. At the crucial moment, Simon, afraid of prison, abandoned his wife and son. He ran off with the phone. Zana understood Bambi's true target was the fawn, so she placed it gently on the ground. The moment the fawn landed, Bambi calmed down. He didn't attack Zana at all. Instead, he leaned down and licked the fawn's head. Just then, Michael, covered in blood, crawled back up. He aimed his gun for a sneak attack. The bullet hit Bambi's vulnerable belly. Bambi let out a mournful cry and fell to his knees. As Zana sank into despair, Mary suddenly appeared like a warrior holding a shotgun. She fired once and killed Michael instantly. As for Simon, who had fled earlier in a car, he soon discovered a strange rabbit had appeared inside. Sensing danger, he reached for the door. The movie ends here. Subscribe to the channel Plot Prime